Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome all. Hi, this is Daniel here with DM Network Solutions. Today, we are going to talk about what we have learned so far from our Wix development and our Salesforce integration. Right. So, just to give you a little recap here, um, Wix recently created what is called packages, and they release a Salesforce integration package. So if we swing by to our main screen here, we can see our main website. And if we go here to in our Wix instance here, we have our backend, and we can see we got packages and we got our Salesforce integration. So they're up to version 1.7. Okay. So if we pull this up, we can see that there's a README file here that shows you all the information about your integration. And basically, you need a username, a password, and a security token. Okay. And we save that to our Wix secrets manager. So in your Salesforce instance, um, when I first tested it out, I used my own admin credentials, but I recently discovered that a better best practices is creating a new user and giving it the permissions, creating a profile and giving it just the permissions it needs. Okay, so we created a new profile using the standard user, and we called it API integration. Okay, so this is a profile and it has the API permissions, um, the the creates all permissions, read all data permissions, and we have create custom reports, but just make sure that it has access to the objects you want to work with, such as accounts, contacts, any custom objects you want it to interact with. And so that profile, it will have access to those things only. Okay. So it's not going to have administrator access. So it won't, you don't want to give it permissions to create um, new users or to do other things that may be considered a security risk. Okay. So we use a standard user, and then we give it permissions to use API, REST API, and to create various and modify all data. Okay. So we had that modify all data. And then the other important thing is make sure you check mark also do not expire. Password does not expire. Okay. So you can always change the password, but the password do not expire. You control when the password changes. Okay. So that way you don't lose any integrations that you may use. So right now, I'm only integrating to one system. So best practice is probably creating different users for different integrations. So I created one user. We call it the Wix Velo user. I also created a new email so we can just keep all the information related to this user to this one email. So that way, if we ever need to reset the password or anything like that, it's not tied into our main support email, but it has its own dedicated email address. Okay. And this user, we gave it um, the role of API integration, and we gave it a profile of API integration. So it's active, and you just want to give it enough permissions to do what it needs to do. So since we're testing here, we're just gonna give it enough permissions, but If it's going to be something that you use in production, you want to address as many permissions as it needs. You don't need to give it more permission than it needs. Okay. So this user, um, once you log in, if you need to reset the key, once you log into your to that user account, you can go to the picture up here. You can go to settings, and if you don't have the key, every time you reset the password, it gives you a key. But you can just reset my security token, and then this will send the email with a new token. Okay. So you get your token, you got your username and password. Now we're ready to go on the Wix. Okay. So on Wix, from our dashboard, we can go to our main menu into developer tools, and we can go to secrets manager. And in secrets manager, here's where you handle your secrets. So what is a secret manager? This is where you store your API keys and the tokens. So in a code, in the backend code, you can refer to this without exposing any passwords or security tokens. Okay. So you create your token. Okay. And it needs to be named this because in the README process here, it uses this name. Okay, so it's already hard coded in there. So you got to use that name, and then you just copy this object right here, and so you got your username. So you replace your username here with the email. You type in your password, and then you paste in your token. Okay, and you just paste that in into your value here. Okay, so make sure you paste that in how it needs to be pasted, and that way it is sent out that way. Great. Now, um, what we're going to do is we are going to see how this all works. Okay. So once you have your information in there, um, so I did create a new page here. So if we go back to our pages, we got what is called the Salesforce wrapper. Okay, so this is you can create this from our README file. So basically, I created a form. Okay, so we created a form and it connects to this backend file. So if we go back to our pages here, we have our page. So this page has two functionalities. It has a lookup functionality and it has a form uh, put functionality. Okay, so we can save a new record. Okay, and we can look up records. What happened? Hmm. Okay, so actually we have dual functionalities also. So this is a form that saves to a database in Wix, and at the same time, it also saves sending the information to Salesforce. Okay, so this form we simply have a data set, and we have some fields here. So we linked up, we connected these fields to our data set. Okay, service record data set. So when we click on register, it's gonna save this information into the data set. And on the click on the button, it's gonna take the values of each of these fields, and it's also gonna send it to Salesforce. Okay, so let's take a look. So as we can look at the code here, we're importing two functions. We got a create record, and we also get a get name based on phone function here. Okay, and this is coming from our Salesforce wrapper. Okay, and then here's our Salesforce wrapper, and this is importing from our Velo package integration. Okay, so that's this backend package here, and we can see. Okay, so I'm gonna get a little bit closer here. Okay, so as you can see, here's the top. All right, so it's importing our records. Um, so it has an async feature function here. So this is where we create the record. Okay, so see it's getting, so this object, this record object. Okay, um, we're getting this from our page. This has all the fields that we need to create that record. Okay, and then we're also validating, making sure that it has at least a name and a phone number to create the record. Okay, those are two things we want to make sure it has in order for us to create that record. And then we get our record here. So we're waiting for a response of create record. So it's gonna look up the contact. So this is the object we want to create the record in. So it's going to be created in our Salesforce contact object, right? And if it has everything it needs to create that record, then we're going to get a success message, okay? Otherwise, we get a reject, and it tells us why it couldn't create that record, right? And then we have some other validation. If they didn't include a name and a phone number, then it rejects it also. Please make sure there's a name and a phone number. Okay. All right. So this is basically our function when we create the record. Okay. So now if we go into the backend for Salesforce, we can see what's happening here. So this create record. Okay. So if we go down here, so we got our create record function. So see it's so see the S object, okay? So that's the context. And then we have the record, okay? So that's the all information in that record. And then it says authenticate account, okay? So that's inputting the the username and key. And then if it's authenticated, then it can continue. So then it's going to go ahead and look up that object, and then it's going to create a record with that information. Okay. So when we create that record, we need to make sure that the fields are what's in that record. Okay. So make sure that your fields have the right names with the keys. So for example, if you go to your object here for contact, see when we create a contact, it has all these keys here. See, this is the field name. Okay, so these are the keys. So the field name, you know, if it's a checkbox, then it can't take a name. It got to take like a true false, right? Or a one or zero. You know, if it's a lookup thing, yeah, it's looking for an account string of an account number. Um, but basically, what we are creating a record with is we are using their name, right? So if we look up name here, name, okay, so we got name. So the funny thing about name is this name goes beyond name, right? It has first and last name somehow. So that name field is kind of tricky, okay? But for any custom fields, right? So if we have any custom fields we're working on, um, then it's just gonna be like text, right? So make sure you're sending a string like for email. It's looking for email address. So if we go back to our form, okay, so this is what Salesforce is gonna take in, okay. So if we go back to our actual form here, if we can see when we create a record, right? Let's go back down to that function. Okay, so here's the create record handler. Okay, so see it's taking in the value. So when somebody types in a name up here, it takes in the value that's typed in there and it puts it to a variable called first name. Okay, okay, so we just capturing all these variables. Okay, and then here we're testing, making sure that we have a first and last name. I mean, first name and a phone number. That's what we need to create a record. Minimum things we need. And then it's gonna, now this is where it's gonna map to these things we're gonna send to our backend, right? So these are the actual names in Salesforce. Okay, so make sure these keys are the correct naming. For example, this mailing postal code, okay? So if we go here to our object, if we look up, let's see, mailing, okay, so see we have mailing address, okay? So see, it just says mailing address, right? How can I look up this information, right? This was, I was getting an error. So if you get an error that it can't find the right information, like for the field, um, if we go back to our README file, okay, it has a link here that takes you to, okay, okay, one of these links here, let's see. Okay, so see, here are our standard objects. Let me open this up a little bit. So here we have our Salesforce developer, and if you're not sure about some of these standard objects, like for example on contacts, let's see where's contacts. When we look at the address, let's go down to contacts. But this is really important because that way you're mapping to the right fields on each of these objects, right? So if we go to contacts, let's see, contacts. Okay, contact. Okay, so see we have, see here's the actual names of everything as far as the standard objects. Okay, so see we have mailing address. Okay, but then I was looking up mailing postal code. See, so see this goes and it tells you, okay, so if you use this key or that field name, that's what's gonna let you go in there. Okay, so see we have all these fields, but in Salesforce it just says mailing address, but below this there's extra layers of fields. Okay, so that mailing, like if you just link to this mailing address, it just gives you like the whole address in one string. Okay, so for the name, okay, let's see name, let's look up name. Okay, so there's lots of names here. So first name, okay, first name, contact first name up to 40 characters. Okay, so see first name, see. and then it starts with capital letters. See, first name. So if we go into our actual form here, see we have first name with lowercase. What the? But here's capital letter. Hmm. Everything's capital letter. So see, this is how it's going to come in into our backend file. So let's see what it looks like in the backend file. Okay, so when we're creating the record, create record, so everything is as a single record here. Create record wrapper. Okay, well, somehow it works. But just make sure that these fields are all the correct ones. So we're gonna test this out in a minute, but I just wanted to go over it. Um, so for the form, when it creates the record, um, then it clears all the fields. So that's why we have these things here. This is just clearing the form for it to be blank, and then we're resetting the validity. Okay, so that way they don't show all with the red marks. So we can just create a new record after that. Okay. Um, and if we get a response, everything's good. We get our message here, and we show our message. Your record has been added. If we get an error, record was not added, and then we can show our error. Okay, and then here, if we don't have the first name and a phone number, we have another message here that says just to input the name. And then here are some functions to show these messages. Okay, so this makes the text expand. There's a little text box up there. All right, and then we have one to show a different message and to close the box. Okay, so we just gotta add this one right here. Okay, so here are all of our functions. All right, so let's go ahead and test this out. Let's make sure it's still working. Okay, so here is our form. The last thing I was working on is for the lookup. So right now we're gonna create a new record here. Let me just create another record here for me. Just gonna put some information. So the way this works is this is simply gonna create a new record with all these fields, right? And we put in this phone number, okay? So if we click register, okay, so we get content has been submitted, okay. Tech has been submitted. Okay, and then record, your record was added. Okay, so this content has been submitted. This is a message from Wix, right, from our database. And then when we hit register, it also registers that click. And then your record was added was a message we got back. Successfully added a record to Salesforce. Okay. So if we look up this phone number again, we can go here 407-555-4222. Okay, and this is another function. So we're getting a record now. So but right now, see it did um so see it pulls up, we found two records. Okay, right. So I'm gonna talk about this now. So also if we take a look in our Salesforce, go back to our main Salesforce window here, we can take a look at our records and we can look up contacts. Okay, and we can just view all contacts. Okay, and then here's the one we just created. Okay, so here's our record, and it creates a new record. It puts it to a household, and see, we have our account owner, and that's our new API account. Okay, and we can see our record here. It has phone number, has the name, has an email, and then we can link up a lot of these other fields if we needed to. You know, it captures the zip code, so all those fields, right? And then we have our API user. Okay, so that's our new user, API integration. So that way we can identify where it came from. All right, pretty cool. And from there, we can do all types of automations, process these records. This could probably be leads. You know, we can assign this to leads. However, you capturing your information. The next thing is, let's go back to our Wix here. And then also, if we, just to be sure, at our data set in Wix, we also created the record here. So if we take a look at our service record, okay, here are some service records. Let's see. Okay, let's get rid of any filters. Okay, so here's our record. So we can see it has the household, zip code, the name, phone number, email, all these other fields that were in that form, basically. These fields were crossed earlier, so that's why. All right, so there's our record. So in one form, we were able to save both records. Okay. You can even go beyond that if you really want to link them up. Each record has a unique ID, right? So Salesforce has their own unique IDs, and Wix also has their own unique IDs. So you could um, capture that ID as you save it. Once you get the ID, then you can create the Salesforce one, right? And then that way you're sending the Wix ID to Salesforce. And then once you get the record confirmation back from Salesforce, then you can do maybe an after save to this ID and put it in another field in Wix also. So in the same time, you kind of like cross putting each one's ID. So if you needed to kind of like update information on either system, you have the reference of the ID in both databases. You know. But you know, if there's any errors, then you know the IDs can kind of like not get saved and all that. So the system has to be pretty good in order for it to kind of like work all the time perfectly. But that's one way to do it. Now let's talk about this lookup field. Okay, so on the lookup field, we have this lookup. So this is just regular field, and then we have a message here, and then we also have this drop down menu. Okay, so we have our drop down menu. It's a blank drop down. It has no values. Let's get rid of that title. So we just have our drop down field here. So what it does is this field right now, if it finds one record, if it only finds one record, then it's just going to show what it found in the text. If it finds multiple records, then it's going to put it in a drop down here, so you can select which record you want. And once you select that record, then you can probably see the information below. So let's do that. Let's show the information below. Okay, so we got our phone field here. Let's make a little bit more space here. So right now the field is just hidden, and this message is collapsed. So we can do hidden and collapse. Okay, so it'll expand automatically, and then we have our button here. Okay, so the functionality that we have going on here in Wix is we have our field, right? So this is when we click on the button, okay, so it's going to handle that information. It's going to fire up that function. So let's see, we have okay, so here's our on-click handler. Okay, so it takes the name of this field, right? The name, the ID, and we have an on-click arrow function, and it's going to fire up this query record handler. Okay, so the query record handler says if this is collapse, then close message box. Okay, so if it's not collapse, the closed message box is going to collapse again. Okay. All right, so don't worry about this. But here is, and then it shows a little loader screen. Okay, so it's going to take the value of that field, and then we're going to await the response of this function with that phone number value. Okay, so here's our value. Then it's going to send it to get name based on phone. Okay, so that's in our backend. So we got get name based on phone. It's going to take in that phone number. Okay, so we're going to create a query where we're going to select a contact name, contact email from contact where phone number equals our phone number, and then we order by a descending created date. So it's going to show the latest ones first, right? That have that same phone number, right? Okay, so we're going to get our query. Okay, so then we're going to do this validate phone number. So validate phone number is just basically making sure that it's a phone number. Okay, so here's some regular expression validation. It's numbers. Okay, you provided something that was not a number, right? Okay, so we got our validate phone number. Okay, so if that goes, then it keeps going. And then we have our result. So whatever comes back in our query. Okay, so query records. So this query records is going to go to our Salesforce backend, right? So to our query records. Let's see, where's the query record? Okay, so here's our query records. So it's going to take that query string, that long string that had all those queries. It's going to make sure that we authenticate, and then it does that query, and then it gets our returns whatever it finds. Okay, so after it returns what it finds, then we're taking the results, the records it founds, and the length. Okay, so that tells us, it just tells us what's the length. Okay, so if the length, so we're going to return the length and the results. Okay, so actually we're just returning results. Okay, so see, it just does that query and we get the results. Okay, and if it's a good result, if we get an error, then we get an error. All right, so then we do some of the other functions here in our actual page. So once we get our response, okay, here we're handling the length again, right? So we have the results, and then it has something that's called total size, right? So this gives you like how many records it found, okay? So I'm handling, if it's more than one record, then we're gonna get those records, right? And I'll just constantly the records to see what it looks like. So if we look over here, this is what it looks like actually. So here's our records. So I find two records, right? It found, and it's only returning email and name, right? Because that's what we were requesting back, right? The name and the email from the backend. And it tells us it's the type of contact, and we can actually map this URL. So if we have Salesforce open and signed in, we can link directly to that contact with this link right here. Okay, and then it gives us the next one. All right, so if we go back, here, we now have our record, and I'm just getting the name. Okay, I'm getting the name on that first record. So we have a loop here, right? So we looping, and we're just getting the name and the email. And then to put it into our options um, drop down, we need to create a label. So I'm creating a label with the name and the email, and then the value. The value is going to be the name and email too. We're really not doing much with it. This value could be something else. Maybe we can also get the ID. Let's see. See, we're not pulling the ID, so we probably need to pull the ID for this. Because if we want to do something with these records, we need the ID, because we can pull their name and email, identify the one we want, and then the value can be the ID, right? So the label is what you see, but the value is what we want, which is the ID. And then with that ID, we can probably run another query and get the full record, like, or get the fields that we need from that record. Like if we needed to select to fill out the form, right? So we'll need the ID for that. So we're looking it up from the phone number. we're identifying the name and the email that we want. If there's duplication, or if there's people with the same and phone number for some reason, want to pick the right one, and then we get the ID for that specific one, and then we can do the save. We can pull up more information for that person, right? All right. So basically here we just then we do a push. Okay. So we got this other variable here. It's an object, right? I mean it's an array of objects. So we're pushing this object for each option, and then once we have those options, then we put it back into our drop down menu, and then we show our drop down. Okay. But after we select the options, then okay, and then here's where we had this other thing here. It says show execution message, right? So if I only find this works with one record right now. So if we find one record, we pull that record 0, right? That first record, and we just um, plug in the name and email, and we have phone number found, one record, it's the length, da da da. So we just plug that in, okay? And that's what that message will show. So if we want to make this more functional, we need the ID, and then we need the action that will happen after that, which is, if they pick it, then it could plug in the information here, but that will be for a different page because this is basically creating the record. So we don't want to plug it into this, but that's how the lookup works right now. Okay, very cool, very awesome. So, um, I would like to just try what we were just talking about with the ID, because that will be the next step. So if we go back to our query, okay, so see here is our query, right? So we are selecting the name. Okay, we got contact ID. Okay, so we're already getting the ID here. So see, this is looking for first name and phone number, but we're only putting the phone number. Oh, actually, this is a different it's a different one. Okay, so on this one, okay, so we got contact name, email. Okay, so here we need contact ID, right? Let's see, because this was one I was just working on, different one. That one, see, you're getting more stuff here, but so contact ID. Okay, so we're gonna get the name, the email, and the contact ID. Okay, and see here we're just looking up just phone number. Okay, that's why. Okay, so now when we get the results, it's gonna include the ID now. Okay, so that's all we needed to do. So now we're gonna handle this ID when we get it back. So all we need to do is record ID. let's see if it shows up like that. Okay, here we got to do the same too. So let ID equal records ID, and then we'll do the value instead of being the name. We'll just let it be the ID. Okay. And here, we'll just show the ID. So ID, great. So you guys can see this one. You know what? I think we can just show this one too. Let's see, copy. And then when they select something, we can do maybe on change here. Do, then, okay, let's see. So we got our change event. So we're gonna can we pull from here? Okay, that's just gonna show. Hmm, user name. Okay, so if we want to use this stuff here, let's see. We can do select user. Okay, let's see what we got. We got value, right? Do we have value? Okay, so we got value. We got value. So we're gonna make user value. We'll just call it something. That the value. Hmm. We'll have to test this out really quick because I'm not sure about this one. How do we get the? So a really good resource I use all the time for our Wix is their API. Oh, okay. Let's see if we're talking about our drop down. Yeah, drop down has what is called options. And see you have what is called label and a value. But you need to have drop down. It says get list of options, add option, get drop down placeholder, selected index. Okay, so selected index, get the value, render. Okay, so I think if we have selected index, setting selected index property sets an option that at that index to be selected option. To set one of the options to be selected, set the selected index between 0, oh, reset option, and define placeholder. Okay, so our drop down sets or gets element value. Adds an event handler that runs. So if we look at the unchange, okay, so we got unchange event. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do here. So we got an unchange event, let new value, oh, event target value. Okay, so that's whatever they selected. Okay, so we just can create. Okay, so we have our okay, so whatever they select, and then we'll just put that here. Okay, let's see. User ID. So what else can we do here? Okay. All right. So I guess to get the name and email, how can we get that? Okay, for now, we're just gonna take that off. We'll figure that out. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we save our form. I'm gonna go back to our screen here, refresh. Okay, so we got our new form. We're gonna look up that same phone number, 555. Only aggregate expression use field. Okay, so something went wrong. It could be because it's talking about the query. So we're getting a bad query here. So all we did was we added this. Oh, look. Okay, so you gotta put a comma there. Okay, make sure. Okay, so I found it. If we go, so here, we added this contact, but we forgot to put a comma. So make sure you got a comma in between each things you wanna select. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, we're gonna refresh our page here. Go. All right. Okay, so we are finding stuff here. Um, okay, so I think what happened was we're not seeing the drop down because I forgot that I also collapsed it. So in our drop down option here, in our drop down option, we need to not only um, make it show, but we need to expand it also. So show and expand, you probably don't have to do both because if you have it, show the benefit of showing something is you can make it fade in. All right, so let's just try this one once again. Okay, third term is the charm. Okay, so we're gonna perform our lookup. Type error cannot read property name of undefined. What? All right, so there's another error here. Okay. All right, so okay, so I know what it is. All right, so name. So the name, what's talking about is what are you talking about? Cannot read property name of undefined. Okay, so another fun feature you have here on Wix is you can run some of these in the back end. So let's see if this works. It has to be a string. All right, so see, we're getting an ID now. Okay, so that's working. So what is it talking about the name? Can't work with the name. So our backend function is working. That's good. Get rid of this. So it's talking about name. From. Okay, so it has to be somewhere else. Let's see. So here we did mess with something here. Let me see. Okay, we got name here. We got our label. That's that name. E. Here's our option. Okay. Let's see. Then we have this right here. User ID. Okay. Here's Oh, you know what? We're reclosing this. Let's close there. That. Yeah. Sometimes you got to make sure you got all your closing statements. So we got record name, record ID, username. What they're talking about. All right. Let's try with a different number. We're gonna do a new test. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna create Sally seller 7 7. Okay, so we're just gonna get Sally situated here. So we got our record was added. All right. Let's look up that record. 777. All right. So when it's one record, see, this is what I was going to show you earlier. It takes this value, it shows you there, found one record, user, Sally Seller, email, and our ID. Okay, so that's all working correctly. So let's add her again. Sally got married, Mr. Smith. Her phone number is the same. Her email is different. She moved to Florida. She lives in a home. You even start speaking English. Now she got 3 kids, and her family is only them. Oh, okay. So see that these messages they had to clear here earlier. Um, so we can fix that to clear it. Now if we look up Sally again, let's see. Up. Now we get this. Okay. So now we got 2 records here. So which one do we want? We want the new one. All right. Okay. So we're getting the ID. All right. So this is looking way better now, and our drop down is working. So yeah, to get that label, I'm not sure how we can get the label also. There is a way to get the label. There's another page here that I got the label somehow. You have to index. You gotta select the index, and then from that index, you get the label. It's kind of like a reverse lookup type of thing. But I'll have to get back at you with that one. All right. But so far, that's what we have. We have created a form that saves information to our local database in Wix. And then it also creates a record in Salesforce. Then we can also look up records by email, and we can get the information we need, such as an ID. And then from that ID, we can also get, so if we go here to back to our backend, in the backend, we also have what it is a retrieve record. Okay, so with this function of retrieve records, it takes in an ID, and you can retrieve a record. That record that's pretty fast when you have the record ID, because it's just gonna look up that object and that record ID, and it'll give it back to you. If it can't find it, then it'll give you an error message. And the other things we have here, we have update records. We can delete a record. Um, you can probably do a upsert also. They don't have it in this, but you can probably write, using the same type of thing here. Oh, but this file is locked, okay? So it's read only, so you can't really change anything on this, but you could probably create your own, maybe copy this whole thing, create your own. All right, but it's pretty cool. Does work with any of your custom objects also. So you can create different backend files for different functionalities, for different objects you want to work with. And that's just scratching the surface of what you can do with this. Okay. So if you have any questions, any comments, please leave it below. I'm continuing looking into improving what we got going on here. The next thing I would like to see is ways that we can pull in information and create maybe reports, create uh, numbers that automatically update on our website. Um, here at the Dream Center, we work with people requesting food pantry assistance, requesting diaper assistance. So we can pull in some information, maybe the number of amount of pounds we served this year, or the amount of families we helped. Um, Maybe we can tie it into some type of inventory, such as diaper inventory. When people register, that we have a live inventory that tells us when certain amounts are low. and maybe if they're requesting a diaper size that we don't have, they'll get a message letting them know. So the possibilities are endless. Definitely looking to get into more of that information. But so far, if you have any questions about the field names, you can look that up in the Salesforce developer website. And that's where we found that information. Okay, so see here are some other calls. You know, you got your create, delete, describe, layout, get deleted, get updated, search, undelete, update, upsert. They're always adding new stuff. Um, the integrations and all those APIs have matured a lot this last year, and a lot of the tools that we use have also improved. So that's been a great benefit. Um, yeah. So definitely, if anybody is looking to get any of these integrations going on their website, or their company is looking for someone, definitely you can reach me here on YouTube by sending me a personal message, a comment, and you can also find me at our website here at DM Network Solutions, dmnetworksolutions.com. Uh, it's a new company I'm building, looking to get new uh, contracts for someone that's looking to get their organization or their website integrated into what it is, Wix and Salesforce. And definitely here to continue learning and continue improving our skills. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me in this long-winded live demo, and hope you like it. If you have any suggestions, please share it with me.